Hello, Jason here with another book review. I'm going to be talking today about Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Yeah, really enjoyed this book. I haven't. I've been my goal in 2020 is to read more fantasy, and this was kind of the first. This is the first fantasy novel I read this year. Yeah, it's basically the story is about this girl. Her name is Rin. She lives in this like kind of poor peasant part of the country of Nikan, which is it's basically China. She lives with she's an orphan, so she lives with these two foster parents or whatever who treat her like shit. They own this little shop and they make her work there all the time, and they're dope dealers. They're opium dealers. So they make her mule for them and stuff, and they're just like, whatever, dealing opium, which is a capital offense. So like Rin is kind of taking a risk, doing what she does, but they make her do it. So yeah, she doesn't really have a choice. So anyway, she wants to get kind of out of this life. They want to marry her off to this like political dude, just like whatever, magistrate or some. I don't know what he is exactly, but he's like an important guy in the community. They want to marry her to this guy, and so that they can kind of continue growing, like so that he'll look the other way when they're doing their poppy selling, their opium selling, and she doesn't want to do that. She does not want to be the wife. She doesn't want to settle down. She doesn't want to have kids. She wants to get out of this life. She wants to go do something important and whatever. So there's this test that everyone takes when they're like 15 or whatever, 16, I don't know, however old. That basically it's like an aptitude test. They place you in one of the academies. There's a bunch of them, so if you score high enough, you can go to one of the academies. But she's poor. She doesn't have any money. The only academy that is like a scholarship based is the highest, the top tier level military academy is called Synagard. So she's like, I gotta get into Synagard because it's the only way out of this. Like, if I don't do it, then because I can't afford any of the other academies, and if I don't do it, then I'm gonna have to marry this douchebag. And she's like, I'm probably just gonna kill myself because I don't want to do that. So she studies really hard, and she actually gets this tutor who is addicted to opium, and she bribes him with opium basically. So he teaches her, like she studies really hard, and she, of course, makes it into Synagard, of course, and goes to this academy. So she's there, and she's learning how to be like an elite military person, and everyone like looks down on her because she's poor, and she's like from the poor province, and everyone who's there is like rich and like whatever. They're like, you're poor, you don't know anything. Like, yeah, even the teachers are kind of assholes to her, and they don't like her because she's poor and stuff, and so she's got to like overcome all of that kind of bullying piece. But she does her studies, and then so the way it works is like in your first year you kind of do general studies, and then at the end of the first year there's a bunch of trials. You test in a bunch of different subjects, and then you pledge for certain subjects to be your like main focus. And it's like history and like combat and like strategy, and there's one, I can't remember all of them, but there's one that's called lore. And lore is the lore master is he's kind of aloof. He's a weirdo. No one really likes him. He doesn't have any apprentices, so everyone's just kind of like, why is he even here? He doesn't teach any classes. He's just a goofball. And basically lore is about shamanism, And so in this society, there's like shamans who are basically people that they take drugs and they are able then to commune with the gods. And this is like the magic system in the whole thing is like that the gods give them powers. Like there's like there's like 64 gods or whatever, and each of them kind of is the god of whatever, and they give you power. So like the god of the phoenix gives you like firepower, and there's like a god of water or whatever, and there's like a god of the boar that like makes you strong, whatever. So that's what lore is, and most people in the society think that it's like it's mythology. It's just dumb. It's like there aren't really shamans. They don't really commune with gods. It's just a bunch of people getting high, and yeah, so that's why no one really cares about this lore guy. Everyone's just like he's just a prankster. He's just like he's in like the trees, like brushing leaves onto people and stuff, just like dumb shit. He's just doing dumb shit and like annoying the other teachers, and so everyone just kind of thinks he's a joke. Until Rin and him kind of have this funny relationship. They like eventually meet up and start talking lore and stuff, and yeah, and then at the end of her first year, she does her trials and that, and she pledges lore, which is odd. Most people, like I said, he didn't have any apprentices. Nobody wanted to pledge lore. So then they start training and start doing stuff, meditating and things like that. And she's like, "When are we gonna start fighting? When are we gonna start using these magic powers?" And he's like, "Look, you gotta slow down. Like you gotta understand this isn't a game. Like communing with the gods is dangerous. They can really mess you up." And she's like, "I don't want blah blah blah. I don't know, whatever." She's just a young kid. She doesn't understand. Yeah. So that's basically like the first half of the book. Then, fast forward 5 years later, or however many years later, I don't know. They're like in the middle of a war with Mugen, which is like an island nation. It's basically Japan. And they're, fighting in a war. And so everyone's been assigned to like a military unit, and they're all, spread out. All the people that were in her class or whatever, are all spread out across Nikon, doing whatever they got to do. And she gets selected for this like very like elite shaman group military unit. They're not really elite. No one likes them. People think they're a joke because they're shamans, and no one even really believes in shamans. But they actually do very, very important work for the Empress, and they're basically assassins. And then so it's like then the rest of the book is like them at war, and she gets the opportunity to see some really horrible shit, atrocities and war crimes and horrible things that really affect her mentally, and then she just kind of cracks and ends up like committing a genocide against the Muganese in order to win the war for Nikon, which, I don't know. So it takes a really dark turn, and that's actually one of my criticisms of this book is that tonally, it's not very consistent. The first part where she's like at the academy and stuff, like all that stuff, I almost felt like I was reading like a young adult novel. I mean, there were parts of it that were like a little bit darker. There was a little bit of like some kind of stuff, and there's bad language in it or whatever. But like, I mean, ultimately, it's like she's getting bullied. Her teachers are jerks. She has to like, do homework and stuff, and like that's like the main. That's what's going on, and so it kind of felt like like a young adult novel. And then you get to the end of part 1 and you go into part 2, and then they're just all of a sudden they're just like in this war and like having to fight and kill people, and like it gets really dark really fast, and then the tone changed so dramatically from like one page to the next it almost felt like, I don't know, that it was written by like a different author. Um, and so yeah, so then horrible things happen. And so this is sort of based on 20th century Chinese history with a Japanese occupation of China and the rape of Nanking, which happened in the 30s, late 30s or something. There's an event that occurs in this book that is like based on that, where basically an entire town gets just brutally destroyed. Like, people are killed in every way imaginable, men, women, children. Everything is just it's atrocious. And it comes down to the fact that, like, the Mugen, the Federation of Mugen, whatever, they don't see the Nikan people as people. They just kill them indiscriminately and for fun, basically, because they're like, it's like pulling the wings off a fly or whatever. Like, they don't think of them as people. And so this deeply affects Rin. This makes, I mean, she like wants to. It changes her perception of these people. Like, the Muganese now are monsters, and they all deserve to die. And there's nothing, like, she will do anything to win this war. And so, yeah, then she, goes through the rest of the story. There's some other stuff that happens to her around, like, she gets captured and experimented on, which is really bad and horrible. And then, eventually she gets to where, so she starts to commune with her god, the Phoenix god, which is the god of fire, and gets the power and basically just destroys the entire island of Mugen. Kills everyone on the island, men, women, children, whatever. It's pretty indiscriminate. Just blows it all up. Just blows it up. Basically nukes the entire island. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a story about, it's like the origin story of the bad guy. Like, if we went through and wanted to know how Hitler became Hitler or something like that. So yeah, really an interesting story arc for the main character. Like, by the end of it, you don't really want to. I mean, you want to know what happens, but it's hard to read. It takes a very dark turn. Because, like I said, the first half is basically a young adult novel. The second half becomes this very, very dark fantasy, where the main character is not a good person. You don't really want them to succeed. But then, I don't know, part of it is, like, how far should you go in order to, like, win this war for your country? Because if she hadn't done what she did, they would have lost. They would have been taken over. The Mugen people, Federation of Mugen, would have gone, just swept through Nikan and just killed. They would have done the same thing that they did at that town where all the horrible shit happened. They would have done that over the whole entire country. They would have just killed everybody. Yeah. So, like, what lengths are you willing to go to stop something like that from happening? Does it make you a monster? Maybe. Probably. Like, she commits a genocide in order to prevent a genocide of her own people. But at the same time, it's like, she's also, a lot of the story is about this island nation of Spear that was genocided years before in the first Poppy War, or the second Poppy War, whichever. There's like many Poppy Wars throughout the story, but where the Spearleys on this little island, they were a race of people who were shamans and could commune with the Phoenix god, and they were destroyed, completely destroyed, and killed. Everyone was killed. There's no survivors. Well, maybe no survivors. There are some. But yeah, and so then she basically doesn't say, like, there's a lot of the story where she's like, that's horrible, how could they do that, that's like, how could you destroy an entire race of people. But then she goes and does the same thing. So yeah, you get to see like the justification for it. And I'm not saying one way or another whether it is justified. I don't think you're supposed to agree with what Rin did. But she had a reason. And that's why she makes such a compelling character, because like even though the shit that she does is horrible and you really don't want to root for her, like she had a good reason. And you almost are like, yeah, I can see that. And like you're almost like, man, maybe if I was in that same situation, would I have done differently? I don't think I can answer that truthfully or honestly, because I don't know. Maybe I would have, but maybe not. It's really hard. And that's why this book was really, really affecting for me, because it poses all these like moral questions that are really, really hard to answer. And it's really cool in that way, which allows me to overlook all of the other faults of the book. Mainly pacing and sort of tonal inconsistencies, and just kind of not great writing. I mean, it was okay. It was fine. It carried the story along fine, but it's almost, you can kind of tell that this is her first novel, which is, whatever for a first novel. This is fucking amazing, and I cannot wait to read the next one. It's called The Dragon Republic, and I'm really interested in that because this really sets up the events of that next novel. There's going to be like, so she destroyed this Mugen, and now she's kind of at war now with the Empress, because the Empress did some kind of backhanded stuff earlier in the novel that she's like, you, how dare you. So there's going to be like this, I have a feeling, I don't really know, but just from the way that this is set up, that there's going to be this like civil war that goes on. And yeah, so yeah, I'll keep you guys posted. I'll definitely do a review of that once I finish reading that. But yeah, again, really enjoyed this book. If you want to read some like really cool military fantasy that it is pretty dark, and set in like a different kind of setting, because it's not, your typical medieval fantasy. It's set in like a Chinese sort of thing, or culture or whatever. It's really, really good. So The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, I do recommend it. Yeah. And, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you've read the book and you have other insights or other arguments, or you disagree with me or whatever, just let's talk about it in the comments. I like, any sort of engagement in that way. And like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this and you want me to keep doing stuff like this. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.